If you're dancing, I'm gonna start recording while you're over in the corner doing your dance moves.
The cue to start recording.
Yeah, you must be really bored. So, what are we talking about?
Glass.
More glass.
Subtly shown here.
Milk glass. Milk glass, opaline, sometimes called, white colored glass. Sometimes a semi-translucent opaque. If you look to the photos I have of that vase you were just handling, the first one, that Randall beehive, we have photos of that online, and I think even after it sells on Etsy, you can search things like that and still see the photos as like a record log. And that one, you can see that it's kind of translucent in the sun up towards the rim there. Yeah. And that's how you can that's one of what I mean by like opalescent or semi-translucent, where the glass is thinner, you can kind of see through it, versus, where the white glass is thicker, there's less transparency. So that other piece, that's called Hobnail. So if you're into that sort of thing, if you're searching, that's what you're going to Google. Think like, Tolkien, Hobbit, Hob, H-O-B, and then nail, like hammer and nail. And you have to think too, not, as you can see, like not all milk glass is in the hobnail style. So there's like milk glass style, and there's hobnail style, and then there's milk glass, which is hobnail.
Now I've noticed a lot of the milk glass tend to be smaller. Is that just my interpretation?
That's just because I haven't had any big pieces of it come through the shop that you've seen. There are very large, like bonnet pieces, like ruffled standing vases. There's like these 11-inch tall ones, which are very like Mad Men, with the thin, narrow neck that flares out. So they can be bigger. So milk glass in general, just to talk about milk glass a little bit, that can be blown or pressed. So it can be handmade. A lot of the earlier Fenton pieces are handmade. So that would be considered, art glass or blown glass. But later it becomes pressed. They use molds. So pretty much any shape, design that the structure of glass can be made to hold, like engineered to hold, milk glass can take on. Didn't actually begin with Fenton, which is kind of like a misnomer thing that goes around online when people start getting into it a little bit but don't really research it. They didn't create milk glass, Fenton. They popularized it at one point, but milk glass became really like in the 16th century, so the 1500s.
Oh,
like, wow. Yeah, like 1506. You're like Italy, Venice, northeastern Italy. So, you're probably not going to come across a lot of that in like even an antique shop. It's more of a museum type piece.
Not a lot of 16th century pieces on eBay.
But who knows? You never know. Most of the oldest pieces originate from Venice. All sorts of colors too. So milk glass, it's called milk glass now, or opaline, because that was the color that became more popular in like the 20s, 30s, and then was like revamped again in the 50s. But it comes in all sorts of different colors. Black, yellow, blue, like robin's egg blues, browns even. Especially in like the 1900s, there was more color involved.
So is there a way to identify that it's milk glass when it's in those colors? Is it the translucentness, or?
You can kind of tell, yeah. It's like that, but colored. I'm trying to think, like there's one, like if you were to Google like black rose ruffled Fenton candy dish, you're going to come up with a multicolored milk glass with a hobnail, with a ruffle, and you can kind of tell. Okay. But just by looking at it, that they're all kind of, they're milk glass, even though they're solid colors. Millennials kind of brought back milk glass in the 2000s. If people are interested in that sort of thing as far as collecting. There's a lot of vintage collecting of it going on too, even now with like the Z-Gens, because they like chunky stuff that's very like unique or funky for like vape wear.
It almost looks like a chess piece here.
Style, yeah. That one's actually does kind of. Yeah. Because of that beehive structure at the bottom. Same thing with like federal glass too, with millennials, because it looks like that blue piece of federal, because it looks like ice, and it's very chunky, very heavy, so kind of back in style, holds a lot of appeal for people. And the hobnail is weird, so people like it, and there's a lot of it around. Yeah, it's weird. It's a little weird, but it's always been like that. In Victorian times, it was popular too. They called it like dewdrop. So yeah, and then back then it's hilarious. At one point, when they started making it, they were trying to market it as milky or milk glass, and consumers hated it and would call it like opalware, opaline, or But now everyone calls it milk glass and knows what it means. It isn't prohibitively expensive, which makes it more fun, I think, too, for people to really put together nice collections of. You have to keep in mind that because it's popular, there's actually people reproducing Hobnail now, even milk glass looking Hobnail. Right. It could not even be from like the 1990s if you're not careful, because people are creating it modernly, like in the 2000s. So if you can find the maker on the bottom of a piece, that's always a great place to start. Like where to start? How would you start by identifying it? Right. So
like this one says Randall.
Literally says it right there, which is a beautiful stamp. And you can just then look up the style in the catalog of the Randall catalog maker, and you know what you have and when it was made. That being said, you can't always find a maker's mark. So if it's heavier, a bit more durable, like if you're looking at two different types of milk glass, and one's heavier and one's a little bit lighter and more fragile, the heavier one's likely from the 1930s, 1940s. And the more delicate, very fine work, thinner often, very fragile pieces, those tend to be earlier, like the handmade Fenton's milk glass pieces. So before 1930s. Or even, much further back from the Gilded Age. You have like these beautiful designs and colorings. They're pretty easy to spot. You could look up an example online. I don't have one here, but and they're much lighter than the more recent, heavier depression glasses.
Or crystal.
Yeah, there's this really fancy term for the end of the 19th century in French, which means like end of century, like fin de siècle, which is or fin de siècle. I don't remember, but anything from around there is going to be lighter.
End of century,
yeah. A very refined workmanship, you can tell. Pieces from around the 1880s, like these, you see how milky white and bright they are and consistent they are. Stuff from before the 1880s, so much older pieces, can look duller because they were using arsenic then.
Well, that's not good.
But so again, right? Just because it's, old doesn't mean old. It means timeless. So if something looks dull, that isn't necessarily devalue or lessen its value. Sometimes it can mean there's arsenic in the glass.
Just don't lick it.
Yeah, used during the making process, so it's older. These were more mass-produced and, less handmade, more molded pieces. So there's more of them. And then I feel like I should talk a little bit, even though I know you're getting bored of handling the same two pieces over and over. You're doing a wonderful job.
It's an easy job.
We should talk a little bit about Fenton Glass. So first in Ferry, Ohio, and then Williamstown, West Virginia. People want to know about this if they're trying to date or find information on Fenton. So the first piece of glass that Fenton actually produced, even though they didn't create milk glass, right? Like I said, they did popularize it. They did create a lot of it. And the first piece they sold was in 1907. So you won't see any marks on Fenton pieces until the 1970s. Like, the Randall one says Randall. Fenton pieces, you will not see a stamped or molded mark like that in the glass until, 1970 or after. Because before 1970, all the Fenton pieces had sticker labels, which were just little paper stickers, sometimes little foil stickers. And they're almost always lost or removed by the time you get your hands on a piece. So, good side note, if you ever have a sticker or label with anything you're collecting, keep it on there, protect it, do not touch it with your hands, do not contaminate it with your oils and the salts from your skin. Really, because it helps identify things later, and it can make things more valuable because then you can figure out who made it much later. Can increase the value if you're into that sort of thing. Protect your labels. So the Fenton Company began by producing Carnival glass, which is like that orange Carnival. Yeah, like that's a pulled piece of Carnival glass that we were showing before in the other video we made. And Fenton, I'll give them their own video. Carnival Glass, I'll give them their own video. A lot of people want a lot of information on that. But Hobnail style, like when we're talking about this Hobnail milk glass, that was one of Fenton's specialties. So it's a lot of people will put Fenton in front of anything Hobnail, especially any milk white glass Hobnail, because it's just kind of always associated to them, right. Sometimes wrongly, but it's kind of important. People really care about that style. A lot of people collect it. Fenton milk glass before the 1960s, you can tell it because it has this iridescent sheen. Even the white milk glasses, like when you hold it up to light, not like the carnival glasses, oil slick, really obvious sheen, right. But this sort of subtle, if you hold it up to light, you can see different colors. It's called the ring of fire.
Oh, that's neat.
Yeah, that's actually what it's called.
I don't think these ones show that, at least not on the video, but
the smaller one might have it a little bit. You can see some like blues or yellows, but it doesn't have the real bright oranges. Oh, a little bit. So, and that has to do with the iodized salt chemicals they used when making it. So you can look for like subtle flashes of that in carnival glass and in earlier solid glasses. I don't know what else to say. Fenton, if you're trying to figure out whether or not your piece is Fenton specifically, generally no bubbles, very high quality. So that's one way to tell if it has a lot of made in defects or bubbles or that sort of a thing. Probably not Fenton. They shut down in 2011. They were around for 4 generations. Wow. Yeah, that it was a family owned for 4 generations. It was over like 100 years. And they survived a lot of other similar glass companies going out of business all around them. So kind of amazing, kind of sad. But they did sell a lot of their molds.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, so they closed their doors. The Glassworks is gone. I think it's getting rebuilt into a school soon, actually, or something. But or it's going to get demolished. But the molds themselves are now in another Ohio company, I believe, that bought them.
So the legacy somewhat lives on.
Yeah, and like if there's like patterns of designs you really like, it's not like they're gone forever, right? Like someone could continue to use them, probably will. Other milk glass companies I should probably mention, since this is the milk glass video. You have the Randall, right? That's a beehive vase, bud vase, because it holds one stem. Sometimes you'll see them called stem vases or bud vases. 1950s, 1960s on that one. One of the coolest Randall pieces I've seen, they kind of have this feathered twist at the end. It's almost like they took the bottom in the mold and like spun it. So that's one of the ways you can tell them if they're not marked. You also have, Indiana Glass Company, L.E. Smith Glass Company, Jeanette Glass. Who else produced milk glass? There's a lot of American glass companies, like right up till the 1950s. McKeon Brothers, Dithridge, Eagle Glass, Gillender and Sons, Philadelphia Glass, big one. Central Glass Company of Wheeling, and that's in West Virginia. Anchor Hawking. I don't have that out here, but we have a great Anchor Hawking, that spearmint set from like the 60s or 70s. Yeah. And that spearmint green, that's an Anchor Hawking piece. They're just really pretty colors. Westmoreland, Imperial. What other names could you look for where you would know? Hazel Atlas, that you could be dealing with real 1950s, 1940s milk glass. If you have a Hazel Atlas sticker on there. Smith, Kemple. So hopefully that helps somebody out. I'm sure there's more. I don't know if I can name anymore right off the top of my head. Yeah.
It can be hard to research this stuff online.
You did a really good job not breaking anything.
I practice. I played Operation lots of times as a child. And this is just like that, but with more expensive items.
Good. I'll let you take a break before we do another one.
I appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone.
Cheers, everyone.